Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Training Industry Leader Talk, Building the Skills AI Can't Replace, sponsored by Allego, Corporate Visions, InfoPro Learning, Hemsley Fraser, and SIY Global. So I'm Liz Spate, the Events Marketing Specialist here at Training Industry, and I'm thrilled to have you with us here today. Before we get started, though, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speaker and get the most out of today's program. So let's open up those chat windows and let us know where you're joining us from today. I am broadcasting live from cloudy Raleigh, North Carolina, and it is a pleasure to have you with us here today. While you're doing that, feel free to use this chat window for any comments as well as questions. This will be a very interactive session, so please do not hesitate to plug those questions throughout, as we will have some team members from Corporate Visions to address those throughout as well. And once the session ends, you should receive a brief survey in your browser. Please take a moment to share your feedback on the session and the speaker and all of that kind of good stuff. All of our sessions are being recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will receive a follow-up email from us with a link to the on-demand program for you to share with your team. Now, if this is your first event, we would love to welcome you. We exist to make connections among learning and development professionals, and we offer tons of resources to support your role in L&D, like live events like today's Leader Talk, as well as through articles on our website, our magazine, conferences, research report, membership, our podcast, you name it, we have it. So we would also love to hear about what you've learned from today's session on social media. So please follow us on your favorite platform so we can continue the conversation. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our first speaker of the day. Paul George's professional background combined with his passion to lead and teach makes him a natural at delivering an engaging and insightful experience every time he facilitates an event. And although an engineer by training, Paul's industry career focuses mainly on sales, marketing, and brand strategy. So with that, Paul, take it away.
Thank you so very much, Liz, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I saw some locations around the globe, and I'm absolutely honored that you would take the time to spend here today. And I'm honored to be a part of training industry and what we are able to partner with them in doing. So, my name is Paul George. And I serve as one of Corporate Vision's facilitating consultants. And in that role, I absolutely work with some of the greatest companies in the world on how they are developing content, how they build their messaging, how they are upscaling their sellers, how they are creating greater alignment between sales and marketing. And so I represent a company called Corporate Visions. And for those of you who don't know, I'll take just a moment and I'll talk just for a second about Corporate Visions as a company. Corporate Visions is a company that for well over 40 years we have worked with companies on helping their sellers tell their story with passion and conviction. We're very much engaged in research. We've probably our estimates, our best estimates are that we probably touch around 100,000 sellers per year through our direct engagements with them and through the many clients who have certified on our content and who teach it within their own companies. We engage with over 250 companies per year. And so, as I said, we do a tremendous amount of research, and I'm going to share some of that research with you today as we start to really talking about and I look forward to getting your thoughts in chat on the skills that AI just simply cannot match. Okay. Now I'm going to begin today. I'm actually going to go to my whiteboard. So I'm going to ask your forgiveness here, but I'm going to pop up to my whiteboard. I hope everybody can see me here. And I'm going to write down three numbers. And the first number is 103. The second number is 12, and the third number is 88. Back in 2009, there was a company called Cigital, and they worked with poker stars, and they analyzed 103 million online hands of poker. Texas Hold'em poker, for those poker players who are watching us today. So they analyzed 103 million online hands of poker. And what they found was only 12% of the time did the player who had the best initially dealt two cards go on to ultimately win that hand. 88% of the time, it was the skill. It was the best player who did not get the best hand dealt to them who ultimately won the hand. And these numbers, this story has relevance to what we're talking about today because I was an active seller in my career. Early in my career, I was an active seller. And I have to tell you, I thought that the reason I wasn't having the success I should have is because of the hand I was dealt. I thought, if our products were only as good as our competitors, if I only had more support out here in the field, I'd be knocking it out of the park, right? And quite frankly, I never really wanted to attribute it to my own skills deficit. I never really wanted to attribute it to how great of a player that I was. But what we need to talk about in the world we live in today, sellers represent the last bastion. Sellers with their lips moving represent the last bastion of differentiation that an organization has. And we got to do everything we can to understand where the gaps in their competencies live and do everything we can to skill them up so that they can go out there and when their lips move, they can be effective at closing business for your company. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts and comments and getting your questions in chat. I'm going to jump back up here and share my screen again. Okay. Now, I'm going to be talking about three questions today. And the first question is, do you know why you win or lose? And I'll go ahead and tell you what the other two questions are. So the first one we're going to look at is, do you know why you win or lose? The second one we're going to look at is, do you know who on your team is good at what? Right? And the third one we're going to look at is, how can you effectively upskill to the different competency gaps that your sellers have? So that's going to be our focus for today. Now, when you think about the first question I asked, do you know why you win or lose? I'm trying to get my pen here to write. Let me find my, here we go. So, do you know why you win or lose? Well, when you think about the way that most organizations will think about win-loss data or how they will evaluate wins and losses, it really all comes down to how the seller goes into the CRM and subjectively puts in the win-loss reasons, right? But here's what we know at Corporate Visions, we have, well, and by the way, they don't really include any customer feedback. They don't include the voice of the customer. They don't include, the input of the buyer into this conversation. There's no buyer evidence. It's the seller subjectivity putting it into the CRM. But what we at Corporate Visions have is that we have a database. We have a platform called True Voice, and within that platform, we have a database of over 150,000 B2B decisions, the win-loss data on 150,000 B2B decisions across all industries, across all geographies of the world. And what we found when we analyzed those 150,000 B2B decisions is this, folks. There is a 70% difference in the perception of wins and losses between sellers and customers. And therefore, what we know to be true is we're going to have to do a better job of getting over here and understanding buyer evidence as opposed to relying solely on the seller and what the seller believes is the reason that there was a win or that there was a loss, right? So let's start looking at that. That means that we need to be able to identify these predictive buyer experiences. And so what we also did when we looked at the data that we have, what we found was there are actually 8 competencies. There are 8 competencies that are ones that predict that buyer experience. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these 8 competencies, and I want to just talk a little bit about each one, and give you a sense of where these come from and how we did this. So, and by the way, for each one of these, you're going to see a number above it. So here you see a 0.91 above aligning solutions to needs. That number is representative of its representative contribution to that predictive buyer experience. It's the area under the curve, if you will. So, and by the way, all 8 of these, you're going to see that that number is significantly above zero point 0.5 because 0.5 is a coin toss. And anything below zero point 0.5 would not be considered as highly predictive of impacting the buyer experience. So the first one is aligning solutions to needs. This is your seller's ability to conduct meaningful discovery. As we at Corporate Visions call it, problem-minded discovery. How accurately are we understanding the problem? How are we aligning to the problem that the client believes that they have? So the first experience or the first competency is aligning solutions to needs. The second is to be able to articulate meaningful value, right? You have to call on financial decision makers, and sellers need to be able to up their business acumen and be able to have the conversation and be able to articulate meaningful value at the level of C-level decision makers. So a second competency that is predictive of the buyer experience is articulating meaningful value. A third competency is making a case for change. Folks, when you think about it, a lot of times, over half the time, or at least half the time, the biggest competitor that you face is the status quo. and people's desire to keep doing essentially what it is that they have been doing. And so, in order to be successful, we got to be able to, our sellers have got to be able to help them see the necessity for change. And so, that's another one of those competencies that must be dealt with. Now I can't seem to. There we go. You got to be able to demonstrate clear differentiation. You know, in a world today where everybody's in more of a crowded marketplace and it seems like every industry, how are our sellers being able to demonstrate clear differentiation? Once again, kind of in line with articulating meaningful value, how are you helping C-level decision makers justify their decisions, right? How are you really helping them align to their strategic initiatives and the metrics that matter to them? Oh my goodness, negotiation. How often do sellers leave value on the table and leak value all the way through the buying cycle when in fact the skill that they truly need is to be able to negotiate more creatively? Then being able to resolve concerns responsibly. We all know that people are going to have concerns. We all know that there are going to be objections raised. How are your sellers resolving those concerns responsibly? And then finally, how are they able to deliver compelling communications? Right? How are they able to empower their counterparts to become advocates for them and to be able to sell within the organization? So these are the eight, we call these the great eight. And these are scientifically proven by analyzing 150,000 B2B buying decisions to be the strongest predictors of success in wins and losses. Okay. Now, I will also tell you that there are another eight competencies for expansion sales because that's a completely different motion. Acquisition is different from expansion. Now, there are two overlapping, and that is resolving issues effectively and delivering compelling communications. Those two skills actually live in both. But here you see skills such as defining success metrics. What's success going to look like in our relationship? How do we accelerate change and adoption? Just because they've signed on the dotted line does not mean that there's been adoption and you got to drive that adoption. How do you manage competing interests within a company? How do you reinforce the value of your incumbency in your partnership? How are you looking into the future and predicting and demonstrating future value? And how are you identifying new white space opportunities within that organization? So, what it really comes down to, folks, is that when you think about running an engagement, when you think about running a sales engagement from prospecting and discovery and solutioning and proposing and justifying and negotiating, all of these things that come to run an engagement, you've also, in order to do that well, you've got to be able to create an experience, right? You got to be able to create a really great experience. And so what we've done is we've really taken a dramatically different look at how we should train sellers, right? Really moving from what people have called courseware to what we would now call competency wear, right? And so at Corporate Visions, we have developed a full library. As I have shown you, there's a full library of core competencies for acquisition. There's a full library of competencies for expansion. There are two overlapping ones. And just so you know, we have not forgotten about the motion of prospecting, right? And we are early stage in the development of our competency materials and our competency platforms for building your digital presence, winning meetings with qualified prospects, and getting lost customers back to the table. Now, what's interesting about the prospecting skill sets are that if you think about it, win-loss data doesn't help you there. You can't really use win-loss data because you don't have win-loss data. Your buy, you know that they're not your buyers are non-participatory during that prospecting process. So, but we are looking at CRM data from a number of databases and clients of ours, and these are absolutely based on data and analytics. Okay. I'm going to pause for just a moment. I haven't opened the chat here for a few moments, but does anybody have any questions? Oops, I went too far in my thing.
As of now, no, everyone's just enjoying what you've been chatting about.
All right. Well, we will keep the ball going. Please, please, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, oh, thank you for that heart, whoever sent that. Please share them with me. I really do want to hear them, and I want to be able to answer, any questions that you might have. So that is the first question. Do you know why you win or lose? And at Corporate Visions, we have now clearly demonstrated using data from 150,000 B2B decisions, analyzing that data, win-loss data, and truly looking at what are the strongest precursors of why you win and why you lose. And looking at those both for the acquisition motion as well as for the expansion motion, and also now going into this prospecting motion as well. Okay. So now we have a better grip on that first question. Do we know why we win or lose? So let's move to the next question here. The next question on the table. Do you know who on the team is good at what? When you think about how we have assessed sellers throughout the history of selling, it has primarily been subjective and reflective, or, subjective or reflective, or subjective and reflective. We've always, sellers, I said this earlier today when I was an active seller, and I was a seller at a company which became a client of Corporate Vision. So just so you know a little bit about my journey, I was a client of Corporate Visions back in the mid 2000s before I became a part of Corporate Visions as a facilitator out there teaching and working with clients in this work. But as a seller, I would have my own perception of what I was good at, right? And quite frankly, I was pretty proud of myself, and I thought I was pretty good at most everything, right? I really didn't look at training. I really didn't have any. I didn't really didn't want that much of a precision analytical assessment done of me. I felt like I was doing fine, and I could self reflect, and I could do that. So by many sellers' reflections, they're doing just fine, or they're managers who are subjectively trying to evaluate, sometimes overworked managers who have too many people that they're trying to manage. They're trying to subjectively evaluate each one of their people, reflecting on the experiences and looking at their quotas, and trying to reflect on the skills that they need, the skills they're good at, the skills where they have gaps and deficits. And that's not good enough in the world that we live in today. In today's competitive world, folks, we have to know who on our team is good and what they are good at based on the competencies that we talked about earlier. So let's talk about precision skills assessments. One of Corporate Vision's partners is an organization called Skillcraft, Dr. David Shacklet, and it was a spinoff of the Harvard Skills Lab. And we've worked with Dr. Shacklet now on developing these AI micro simulation experiences where there are 3 touch points that a seller will go through in a simulated fashion, where they will look at both initial outreach to a technical user, the solution presentation, and then the business justification for the financial buyer. These are, realistic scenario-based situations. As you can see down here, they include role plays, customer conversations, challenges in decision making. And sellers in this simulation, folks, they have to demonstrate their actual skills in context. This is no longer the opportunity for me to grade my own SAT test, for me to grade my own math test, or to reflect on how I did after I had a role play with somebody. No, you have to demonstrate the actual skills in context. And what that does, it precisely measures what people can do, not just what they know or believe to be true about themselves, right? And so that is what we set out to do with Dr. Shacklet, and that is what we have built in terms of this amazing way to assess all 8 of these competencies in a very concise amount of time. These are only 30-minute simulations in total. So 30 minutes of your seller's time to go through this simulation. Now, what can this do for us? Okay. This all the names here have been changed. This is a sales organization, one of Corporate Vision's clients, who put their entire organization through the assessment. And what you can see here is that across all 8 of the competencies, you begin to understand where you absolutely have gaps. You begin to be able to see areas and cohorts whose skills need to be upskilled, if you will, in the different vital areas of the competency, the grade 8 competencies, right? And now, once you do that, think about it, folks. Think about how we've always applied training in the past. Training in the past has always been kind of just in case. We're going to buy this training. We're going to give it to everybody just in case whoever needs it will use it, right? And a lot of times people think to themselves, I don't need that training. And frankly, in some cases, many of them may not need that training, right? And yet you put them through it anyway. You take them out of the field. You give them a bad taste in their mouth for the next time you put them through training, right? Now you can start to identify cohorts. Now you can start to put people in the lower areas together in cohorts in such a way that you can start to train them in a more modular, precise fashion on whichever of the competencies that they need to be trained on, right? And so this moves training from, just in case to being far more precise, and you can apply it more in a just in time fashion, right? And that also gives you the opportunity to look not only at the sellers, but the manager. Because, oh my goodness, how many organizations depend so much on the manager to provide that mentoring across different competencies that they subjectively feel that their people need, and they're the ones that are tasked to do that. Well, and again, all of the names have been changed here, but I think you can see that when it comes to the people who need things like being able Allison's not going to be able to help people that much in aligning solutions to needs and being able to deliver clear, compelling communications and able to demonstrate clear communication, differentiation. And so this helps us to better understand how we need to upskill our managers as well so that they are going to be more effective at being able to be the mentors that they need to be, right? And help them in a way that makes them better managers and makes them better mentors. The other thing that this helps us to do is it helps us to start building a buddy program, right? This gives us the opportunity to start taking really high performers in a given competency and pairing them up with performers who are really low in a given competency and help them to mentor them in a peer-to-peer fashion and help those people be able to close their skill gaps as well. So you think about the possibilities for this being able to identify truly, not subjectively, not reflectively, but with precision assessment, being able to identify competency gaps and being able to create these competency based intensives, if you will, competency based intensives so that you can really start to upskill people who need to be upskilled. Okay. Let me pause for just a moment. Any questions, comments, thoughts about that?
Yeah, Beverly asked, how would you modify this approach if your sellers are contractors working for multiple agencies?
Well, the way that you would do that is that when we build the precision assessment, we're obviously going to build it bespoke to your business, right? And so obviously you would have to make your own decisions about your concerns over their, their sharing of any information about your business. But you would obviously have the opportunity, and we would work hand in hand in conjunction with you in developing the assessment so that it would be very tailored and very bespoke to your business and your circumstances and what it is that you're seeking to achieve. So that is how we would tailor it to you versus it being tailored to a different agency for whom a contractor might be doing work. Again, the extent to which you feel that that might be tipping your hand too far over and showing too much, that would have to be dealt with on a case by case basis. But we would certainly work with you to design the assessment to be bespoke but effective at helping you assess their skills in the way that they are engaging with your prospective clients. Okay. Hope
Beautiful.
that
And then
answers.
I was gonna say, there's one more question that came in also about it. Andrew asked, what are the metrics you are having the AI use to assess the skills through the simulation?
We are having the, let me go back. What we are doing is we are looking at the identified skills and the way that those skills have been best demonstrated based on the win-loss data that we have. And so when we look at the grade 8 skills and we talk about what is it that makes that skill predictive of that particular skill predictive of the buying experience, we know things that should and should not happen in the application of that skill. So for example, in the discovery motion, we know that there needs to be questions associated with problem minded discovery, not always jumping to solution or surfacey type discovery. So, one application of truly being able to be better at aligning solutions to needs is the way in which you are able to conduct problem minded discovery. And so, based on what we know to be the actions that successful sellers take, we build the metrics of success in the AI based on the success in real life from those 150,000 cases that we've studied. And so it's looking at what did those successful sellers in the win column, what did they do in such a way that it drove success, and we develop metrics off of that are showing competency at that skill versus deficit at that skill. Okay? Hope that helps. Hope that helps. Now, this is really interesting. I want you to take a look at this with me. This is where you start to apply this now to some KPIs. And we had a client, and this is a longtime client of ours, and this particular team within that client had been very successful over time. They were notoriously successful for win rates, for good, high win rates, but they were really struggling in 2025 with their win rates. And so the leader, being a very forward thinking and early adopter of corporate vision, she said, everybody on our team is going through this. Now, what you are seeing here is you are seeing the highest quartile performers versus the lowest quartile performers in each one of the categorical areas. And that is then put on this graph in relation to win rates. And so what you see here is that even though something like aligning solutions to needs, even though it does obviously have, it has a higher quartile and a lower quartile, its contribution to win rates is not nearly as significant. I mean, it ought to be pretty obvious to you that the three skills, I mean, if we truly want to isolate and home in on the three skills for this team that need to be upskilled by the end of the year to have better win rates, it's helping justify decisions, delivering compelling communications, and articulating meaningful value. Because the difference in win rates in the highest and lowest quartile performers were the biggest on those areas, right? And what we know to be true from this team is that by the end of the year, they had actually closed at 103% over in terms of their win rate. So it absolutely works. Now, you can also then cohort remediation, because that's what they did. They took the lowest quartile performers in those three areas that I just showed you, and they put those through just-in-time remediation. And by doing that, they were able to reach 103% of their annual quota in that way. Okay. So there's really, the sky's the limit on how we're able to do this, right? And I just wanted to show you here that the same assessment exists also for the expansion motion. So we've also developed the assessment for not just acquisition, but we've also developed it for expansion. So if you have a customer success organization, right, which we work across the gamut, we work all the way from business development folks who, when we roll out our prospecting skills, competencies at scale, your business development folks will have their assessment as well. But we've got all the way from business development through field sales, through customer success, right? So we got the entire gamut covered here. Okay. All right. Now we've talked about two of the questions. We have talked about, do you know why you win or lose? Do you know who is good at what? Well, before I move into this third area, any other questions, Liz?
I was going to say, Amy just wanted to clarify that the company assessment that you mentioned, can it be for customized for other roles other than sales, or is it just for sales roles?
It's primarily focused on both business development type sellers. Um, it can be, and of course, field, sellers, account managers or account, hunters, if you will. But it is very much tailored to your customer success organization if you are using the expansion assessment. Now, should you choose to work with us, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I know Dr. Shacklet and I know how brilliant he is. And if there were some people in your organization who may not have direct responsibility for sales, but the way that they engage with your clients means that they need to have these skills as well, then I'm absolutely confident that we could tailor the assessment to be something that would be meaningful for those folks. But it is primarily for acquisition sellers, whether they're business development folks, whether they're account managers, whether they're out there field sellers, whatever term you want to use, and then also the customer success organization, customer management, customer success. And by the way, I think that's a good. The question brings up a good point, and that is, you know, it's important for people who are not carrying a quota in your company to also have these skills. If you've got people engaging with your clients, these skills, people need to be competent at these skills. So I think it's a great question because it does call out the fact that, just because somebody's not got a number attached to their compensation does not mean that they, are devoid of the need for these competencies, right? So thank you very much for that question. Thank you very, very much for that question. And with that, we will move into so the whole thing here. Let's move into, let me see. Yeah, how do you effectively upskill? That's our third question on the table. We've talked about knowing why you win or lose. We've talked about knowing who's good at what. Now the question becomes, how do you effectively upskill to these different competency gaps? And I've showed you, let's take one of these in isolation. And this goes back to the question I answered 2 questions ago. And that is the metrics that drive the assessment. When you look at demonstrate clear differentiation, we're just going to take that one as an example because that's very important for organizations. How are we differentiating ourselves and how are our sellers differentiating themselves? And as an interesting note, I will tell you that there was a survey that was done by CSO Insights of a large number of B2B buyers. And 68% of those B2B buyers said that they saw little to no difference in how differentiation or value was articulated between any two sellers essentially trying to sell them the same thing. So that's a very recent study, folks, that shows that 7 out of 10 B2B buyers see little to no difference in value articulation and differentiation articulation. So this is an important skill, right? Demonstrating that clear differentiation. Well, what you see here, folks, is that within each one of the competencies, we have identified what are the skills that drive proficiency and competency in that given area. So going back to the question that was asked me about how we assign metrics to the assessment, this gives you a sense of how those metrics are assigned. We know that there are 3 primary skills associated with demonstrating clear differentiation. You've got to be able to define your unique advantaged value versus the competition. You got to stay out of the parity trap and you got to be able to define your unique value. You've got to be able to tell a differentiation story, right? It's got to be a story that lives in their world. It's got to be a story that resonates with them, that helps them understand they're going to be better equipped to overcome a challenge associated with being successful in their business. And you have to be able to do that in a way that amplifies your differentiation, that shows the outsized impact of your solution in their world, right? So, knowing that we have the skills, and you can look across here, I'm not going to insult everybody's intelligence. You're going to have this presentation anyway, but you can take a look at what we have seen to be or what we know to be based on the research we've done, the analysis that we've done. And by the way, the 150,000 B2B decisions is certainly not the only research that Corporate Visions conducts. Folks, we lead the world in decision-making research for B2B decision makers. And so we work with the Stanford Graduate School of Business. We work with the Florida State University Sales Institute. We work with the Warwick School of Business in the UK. We do the research to understand all of these. And so for each one of these, you can see the skills associated, the definitive, measurable skills associated with each one of the competencies. Now, we take this modality of the 4 steps of doing this: learning, applying, practicing, and reinforcing. So let's take a look in the last remaining few minutes that we have together about each one of these areas. What we have created at Corporate Visions is we have created an amazing asynchronous learning. Well, let me just go ahead and go through these. We're going to talk about each one of these. We're going to come back here to learning first. We have created what I believe, and I will just selfishly and proudly say, is the most amazing asynchronous online learning capabilities available in the world today. Very interactive, engaging digital learning, taking advantage of planners and workbooks in order to be able to go through different exercises individually, taking advantage of expert videos as they go through these. And so, from an asynchronous perspective, we have what we believe to be the strongest library of asynchronous inline learning materials available. So, at their own pace, as many times as they choose to, your sellers were going to be able to go through that learning process. A part of that within that learning is applying this, because certainly we want to give them scenarios that they can work on with their own materials, with what they are selling, and to be able to go through realistic scenarios to be able to apply their learning while they are in the midst of their learning. And so not only are they learning, but they are applying this in the midst of that application. Practicing. Folks, we have developed the most amazing AI role play bot And I'll just use this word, folks. It's creepy. I find it very creepy how amazingly realistic this is. But hey, think about this for just a moment. What you see over here on the left is what we call the YU planner, right? This is where they're going to build a message, a value proposition of YU, right? And so in the midst of the learning, they're going to create a message for a buyer on YU. They're going to upload that message into the AI simulator and they're going to role play that. And when they role play that, they're going to be given a result that measures them across the different competencies. It gives them an overall score in the aggregate and it gives them tremendous coaching on both their value articulation, even things like do you use too many unnecessary words? How powerful is your communication, right? And what we find to be true is that sellers who start working in this AI and practicing with our AI, they will do it on average 5 times because sellers are so competitive. They want to get that score up just as high as they possibly can. And in fact, we had an organization that put 2,000 sellers through this at scale, right? And what we found is that out of the 2,000, 2,000 of them had opportunities to use our AI role play engine. Let me say that 400 of them didn't use it. So we had a control group. We had 400 out of the 2,000 that didn't use it. So we had 1,600 versus 400. Folks, the difference in success of those people, the difference in quota attainment was somewhere between 7% and 30%, right? Depending on the different groups within the organization. I'd take the 7, but think about that for just a moment, folks. One activity using the AI role play engine, right? Something that they can do it as many times as they want to, not keeping a manager away from other work role playing with their people. So they get the
Hi there.
opportunity. I'm
How
sorry.
can I help you today?
Oh, goodness.
Hey, it's great to see you again. I just wanted to pick up the conversation about your digital transformation project that we spoke about recently. How's it been going? It's been a bit of a roller coaster, to be honest. We're making progress, but there are definitely some hurdles. I'm really keen on hearing.
I could let you listen to that more. I just wanted you to see the realistic, the nature of this thing, because the thing really is crazy. And then finally, reinforcement, right? We've got to be able to have tools to reinforce this material for everybody. And so we've got some very applicable, very, very usable, concrete reinforcement tools for them to continue to work and use these concepts as your common operating language within your company, right? And having everybody start to work on competencies that need to work on those competencies in a very standardized way, and in a way in which, as I said, they learn, they apply, they practice, and then they get reinforcement, right? And this is reinforcement for sellers as well as for managers. And in addition to that, we have a tremendous number of expert insight reinforcement videos for people to be able to use, and for people to be able to refer back to anytime that they want to be able to do that. So the library is huge and it's world class. Okay. Now, here's the other thing to say. Certainly, there may be points in this process where you are measuring success and you recognize that, hey, we need to come in here and in the midst of what we're doing, we need to do an instructor led, we need to do an ILT, a virtual or an in-person instructor led training. And certainly there are going to be times when that makes a tremendous amount of sense. You want to bring your people together. You want them to be able to share ideas together. You want them to be able to engage in 3 dimensions with a corporate visions facilitator or one of your own trained facilitators who is certified on some of the different competencies. So you can start to build these in a modular fashion. So think about that for just a moment. Think if you wanted to have 2 days of training, you wanted to bring your people together in cohort-based instructor-led training, you could put those cohorts together and have them take the competencies that they need. I mean, think about that, folks. That's never been done before. You go to a training company in the past and you just buy the same training and you put your people's butts in the chairs and you make them all go through the same 2-day training. Well, those days are over because now you can assess them. Now you can understand where their gaps are. And now you can put them through asynchronous learning, application, practice, reinforcement. And if you choose to do so, you can put them through instructor led training that will drive their success as well. So there really are endless possibilities for this. And in fact, oh my goodness, I think I've maybe a few minutes early in ending what I had to say here. Goodness gracious, but that was where I wanted to go. I did want to say, you can get this assessments website. We welcome you to download that and take advantage of it. And by the way, I want to encourage you, please. I'll give everybody just a moment here to grab that QR code. But the next slide is a closing slide. That's the repeat of my first slide with my ugly picture on it. My LinkedIn address is on there. I would welcome you. I'd love to connect with all of you on LinkedIn. Love for you to visit Corporate Vision's website, and that's just www.corporatevisions.com. We make all of our research available in terms of the research briefs. You'll see just numerous webinars on the different topics that I've talked about, and the different skill competencies that are important. So I hope you will use that as a resource. We make so much of our work and our material available to you. And with that, Liz, I apologize. I got them through a couple of minutes early here. I apologize for that. But are there any other questions? Can we wrap up with maybe 2 or 3 minutes worth of questions today?
Yes, Paul George, you are just a kind man. It is a-okay to end a little early. I don't think our audience mind, but we do have a couple of questions. Andrew had asked about that video you mentioned. What models did you build on to generate the video and the audio for that AI role play?
From a technical perspective, I must admit that I don't really know the answer to that question. And I'm not going to be the kind of person that tries to wing an answer when I don't know it. We have a team. We have, just like every other organization, we've created a very strong AI team within our company, proprietary GPTs within our company that are firewalled. I will, if you will make sure I get your name and how I can reach you, I will get the answer to that question. So, first question out of the gate, I'm going to have to say, very, with all the apologies in the world, I really don't know the answer to that question. That's not part of what I do.
No worries there. We will reach out back to you, Andrew, and
Please
get you
do.
that
Please do.
answer.
Please
I
do.
think we have a couple more minutes. There were a lot more, not necessarily questions, but loving what you had to share throughout the session. So if there was anything that somebody can take away from your event today and start practicing within their own organizations today, what would be that one piece of advice?
My one piece of advice would be um, go to our website, learn more about those 8 competencies, and start to just reflect on as L&D leaders in your organization and as folks who are driving the skills process for your sellers, your marketers, your customer success folks in your organization. Start to reflect on where do I see us having gaps in those competencies, right? And the material that I've made available to you today, in conjunction with going to the Corporate Visions website, will give you a lot of of key great starting material for you to start to think about how you might apply that. And of course, obviously, if you would choose to want to put folks through the assessment, certainly reach out and we'll have conversations about doing that. But even if you don't engage directly with Corporate Visions, we make so much available to you on our website. We make so much available to you in the LinkedIn arena that you can start to already think about where the gaps live in your world. So that would be my number one. Start thinking about your teams that you support in conjunction or in with respect to those 8 competencies, and think about where you are seeing competency gaps and ones that you would need to focus on closing first.
Beautiful. And I think we have time for one last question. I apologize if I mispronounce it. I think it's Carissa. She asked, do you wait to release all the competency-based assessments and learning materials at once, or is it possible to use a more agile approach?
Oh, it's absolutely possible to use in a more agile approach. In terms of when the assessment data is available immediately after the assessment, right? And so we of course just work with you on understanding the dissemination of that, but we will work with you in whatever ways that would be most agile, most beneficial for you. So it is certainly not one in which we have to wait to get at scale to your full team and have them all done for there to be some compilation of all of those. No, it can be more cohort by cohort, team by team that you do it and be able to get those results immediately.
Beautiful. And Donna, I see you said you lost the QR code link. I was about to say, I don't know if you want to
Oh,
quickly go over to the next tab, Paul, but regardless, we will be sending you that deck out. So no worries there, but I hope that's
There we go. There it is one last time.
Yes. And while that's up, I was about to say thank you so much, Paul. We are coming out time, and I do want to guide our audience to the next session. So, is there anything else you would like to say with the audience today before we wrap it up?
My greatest appreciation to all of you. 45 minutes is a lot of time to give people. So thank you. I'm honored for the opportunity, Liz. I thank training industry. It's been an absolute joy for me. And on behalf of Corporate Visions, I just want to say thank you to everyone. Thank
Uh,
you.
you're such a fabulous human being. Thank you so much, Paul. You're so kind. And just a great way to kick off this event because the party's only getting started. So, thank you for doing so.
You're welcome.
For everyone else, though, we will be taking about a 15 to 16-minute break. Up next, we do have Dan Rust for their session sponsored by InfoPro Learning, Leading Through the Engagement Crisis. So in just a moment, I'm going to end this session. You can join our next session by going to that session tab in the lobby, returning to that, go to that session tab, and then you will press on to the next session. So I do hope you stick around for our next session, which will begin at the top of the hour. I will see you then. Bye, everybody.